He is going for broke. Drew Pearson. He got it. Touchdown.
All right. Welcome in to Toilets of Titles. Now about them Cowboys, episode number 7. And it's a phenomenal episode. The NFL draft is like 4 days away. So things are happening. All right. Like a lot of rumors and buzz. Like yesterday, the Gilded Chat, the Toilets of Titles Gilded Chat, which is soon to be CFB Nation and Toilets of Titles Gilded Chat. Shout out to my guy KT. I see buzz about Derrick Henry possibly going to the Philadelphia Eagles. So, like, this is for all of you NFL fanatics, NFL draft fanatics. This is like Christmas week because usually, there's 2 times a year where it's like that. One time when the first week of the NFL season, and then the week of the NFL draft. That's the 2 times of the year where I get a buzz like this. And the buzz for the NFL draft is a little more buzzy. That's the proper term, because it's like you don't have to worry about a loss. There's a chance your team swings and misses, but you won't know right away on the draft pick. You could be disappointed like last year. It's a Cowboy show. Let's keep it Cowboy centric. I didn't have any inclination that we were going to draft Tyler Smith until the morning of the NFL draft, because the dudes that cover the Cowboys NFL draft, they know what the hell they're talking about. And they started pointing us in that direction. And I was like, no. But then I started to watch the film. I trust the team. I trust the process. I trust Will McClay. I was like, all right, this guy's young. He's got upside, and boom, it's a home run. So season of optimism. I am joined once again by my guy from the land down under, Mr. Campey, at Andrew Campey on the Twitter. What's cooking?
Yeah, not much. And like that's the thing about NFL draft time is like it's a great time for optimists, because every decision's a good decision, isn't it really? So it's like you can look at it now and you can think like, yeah, my team's looking really good and they're gonna draft these players and it's gonna be great. And it's like there's really not very many negatives. There might be a few after the draft, because there's always a few fans out there who will always complain about a draft pick. But as of like now in the lead up, it's just amazing possibilities for everyone at the moment.
Man, yeah, there's always people who are going to throw stones and they're going to be upset. But I try not to be one of those. I try to enjoy the wins when I can, and I like to visualize and anticipate wins. And Will McClay has earned that. He's earned the ability for me to believe in him. And as much as you hear Jerry this, Steven that, and then it's a little frustrating during free agency, because sometimes they're not super active and you can be a little upset with Steven Jones. But this year they smashed it. The Cowboys are going into the NFL draft with one need, and that need is left guard. Okay, I think they are okay everywhere else. And to be honest, at left guard, there's still people available in free agency, like Dalton Reisner or Risner, however you pronounce it. They brought in that dude who used to play for the Jets, who was a 3rd-round pick, like in 2019. I can't think of his name off the top of my head. He could play left guard. So it's not a huge need, but it's probably the biggest need they have. And I love when they go into a draft like that, because they can just take best player available and they can shock the world. And it could be somebody that could come in and, like, look, when they brought in CeeDee Lamb, no one was expecting that. And they wouldn't have been able to bring in CeeDee Lamb if they didn't do their homework before the draft and they didn't get the team prepared. But let me go through some normal intro stuff. I am on the Twitter at Coach Sheps. The show is on the Twitter at Toilets Titles. Campey is at Andrew Campey. We're doing an NFL draft challenge with the fellas and ladies over at draftcountdown.com. Go to Toilets of Titles on Twitter. The pinned tweet will give you instructions on how to enter. There's a few things you need to do. None of them is pay money. All right. All of them are very simple. The only thing that's not simple is actually completing a first round mock. I mean, you know what? It could be simple. Like I've seen people, you see like during March Madness, if you got a pet octopus, have your pet octopus mock for you, man. It seems, I don't know how these people, where they get their pet octopuses from, but they have their pet octopuses pick March Madness brackets and win. So, or you know, whatever, however you want to do it. It could be simple. It could be difficult. You have a few days. Do that. Get in there. Right now we have 11 entries. So for every 10 entries, we're going to put $20 in the pot. So right now it's only $20. But a lot of people are also waiting until like the day prior to the draft in case there's any trades, which I get that. But do make sure you get it in before the NFL draft. Follow the rules. You don't pay any money. Just follow the rules and you'll have a chance to win. If you're watching this on YouTube, like, subscribe, comment, all of that stuff helps us. We're over 1,050 subscribers right now, so we are absolutely moving. And do me a favor, go ahead, check out CFB Nation. Go ahead and subscribe to their YouTube channel as well, because this is like, as much as it's NFL draft season, Toilets to Titles, we also do fantasy football content, and it's rookie draft season. So there's always stuff going on with fantasy football. But right now, with CFB Nation and with what they're doing, it's like this is the time of year for college football. Like the spring games that are going on, they are traveling, or I'd say because we're also Toilets Title CFB Nation. We're linked up, and I am my show, the Armory, is on CFB Nation, where I'm talking Black Knight football. I was out there for the spring game on Saturday night or Friday night, and I'm going to be recording my spring game recap coming up. But CFB Nation is absolutely covering the map. Any college football team you're interested in, there's a good chance they're covering it, or rather we're covering it. And we just interviewed Grayson McCall, and that's on the channel. So that's very interesting. So go check them out. If you have Apple Podcasts, 5-star review would be greatly appreciated. Ultra Cowboy. I didn't know Ultra Cowboy. He's in the chat right now. Good morning from Puerto Rico. I didn't know this dude is a celebrity. I'm watching the draft show. They're talking about Ultra Cowboy. You know, we had Mike on last week from UK Cowboys fans. He knows Ultra Cowboy. So Ultra Cowboy, I need to put some respect on your name, because the fact that you're watching this show and you're listening is greatly appreciated, because the other shows you watch and listen to are shows that I greatly respect. So me and Campey appreciate that. Anyone else listening at home, if you want to support the show, patreon.com/Toilets to Titles. And that kind of gets us through all the stuff I need to get through. So Camp, before we go through our doc, we got some topics. This is just going to be a fun one, because this is the celebration, right? Because now all the research is done. Things are going to happen. Are there any narratives or storylines or buzz that you kind of want to throw out there before we get into our discussion?
No, look, it's really funny, because it's like been such a broken record of like every episode we've done, because we've talked about how well the Cowboys have covered their bases, and like you said it perfectly in the intro. Like they're in a position now where if the season started tomorrow, you're not completely sweating on certain positions. And I mean, you know, injuries is always a thing in football, and I'm sure there's a few places where if they got an injury, then you know the depth gets pretty light. But in general, they've got a really good coverage. And I think, you know, you look at it and it's really funny, because you talk about that, you know, doing the mock draft for the competition. And it's really interesting, because I feel like we've got, to a certain extent, a good idea of what players are going to get picked and where. But, you know, when you started talking about position 26, and it's like, it just feels like there's just probably about, I would say sort of like, you know, 14. They always talk about this, you know, most teams have like 14 to 18 first round grades every year. And it really feels like this year, that's kind of what the area you're looking at. You've got this big sort of chunk of guys who have a first round grade, and then it feels like there's a massive chunk of second round sort of players. So
Broadus has 16, I believe. Broadus said he had 16 first round grades.
So I can't wait to see, like, I feel like the second half of the first round and the second round is just going to be so good for the NFL draft. I think it's going to be amazing things. I think we're probably going to see a fair few trades as teams want to get that guy in the second round that they're really interested in. So it's going to be interesting.
Do you think Hendon Hooker goes in the first round? Because if Hendon Hooker goes in the first round, that could push a player back to the Cowboys at 26, or if he's not gone by 26, this is a great year for, and we might touch on this a little later, but it's a great year to trade back. And I'm hoping he's still on the board at 26, because that might be our chance. We might not be able to get a lot for it, But if we can get a few extra day 2 picks, like me and you had talked about, it's a perfect draft to have day 2 picks. Like if we have 2 seconds and 2/3, which, I don't know if that's what we're going to get. We might have to give something back for it. And we can come away with a guy like Steve Avila, like a Julius Brents, maybe a guy like Tyjae Spears or Israel Abonaconda, and then the linebacker depth is kind of weak, but like a Dayon Henley, we could imagine that's 4 guys who they make you better, and they make you better.
Absolutely.
But you had mentioned the mock drafts that everybody's doing. I just thought of something that might be a little bit of work, and you know how my brain works. But I wonder if so I'm not entering a mock draft, and I'm not showing any of the mock drafts to anybody. What I do is when I get them emailed, I put them in a folder so that I wonder if I could input all of the mock drafts, like the morning of the mock draft, and average out where everyone has everybody go, and then release like a cumulative mock draft. That would be a nice case study to see that, right? I think that'd be interesting. I'll have to talk to some of our spreadsheet guys.
Well, it's so funny because you're talking about Hooker, obviously, and he was a guy that the Cowboys spoke to, and it's as much as probably I would say just over a month ago, it was talk of they were talking to him because they were talking, sort of almost mid-rounds kind of things. And he's just he just seems to have been creeping up for months, just getting higher and higher and higher. And I think that the big one we're waiting on at the moment is the Cardinals. If the Cardinals end up drafting at 3, then that'll probably make it more interesting. If they end up trading that pick, then you could absolutely see 4 quarterbacks going in the first 4. And if 4 quarterbacks go in the first 4, then someone's going to be desperate. So
there's buzz that the Texans might not take a quarterback.
Yeah.
That's the latest. I believe it. So Ultra Cowboy is in here saying that there's rumors. This could just be smoke. It's hard to decipher. But CJ Stroud had a terrible cognitive test. That's the buzz. Okay. All the other quarterbacks supposedly did very well. He might fall a little bit. There's questions about Levis. There's questions about Richardson. Maybe Bryce Young is the only quarterback who goes top 2, top 3. That means the Cardinals could get a haul for 3 because the second quarterback available might be there. The Colts might be interested in trading up from 4 to 3. So it'll be very interesting to see how the quarterback situation plays out. I see Ultra Cowboy also mentioned Drew Sanders. I mocked Drew Sanders in the On the Clock. So our Thursday night show, kind of the final mock I think we've done at Toilet to Titles out of all of our shows and chats and whatnot. And I mocked Drew Sanders there. And I agree. I think Drew Sanders to the Cowboys he's 21 years old, very young. Started at Alabama as an outside linebacker, came to Arkansas as a middle linebacker. So he's played both positions. He's experienced in both positions. He can grow at both positions. He's versatile. And then having a guy like that who's kind of a weapon, I think it'll make Micah Parsons even more dangerous because it's another guy he's not Micah Parsons, but he can do similar things. So defenses won't know what you're throwing at him. Say you're playing a 4-3, but you got one middle linebacker kind of shaded to the strong side. Now you got Parsons and Drew Sanders walked up on the outside. So it looks like you got a 6-man front, and one of them is going to drop. The offense doesn't. So I think the possibilities are very high. But let's get into this. We're already, this is already 13 minutes in. This is phenomenal. It's too bad we can't talk about this for 18 hours. For my man Campey, it's getting late out there in Australia. So all right. So the draft show, just to kind of talk about some of the other shows we listen to. They narrowed it down to Michael Mayer and Darnell Wright. They're usually pretty correct. So Darnell Wright is out of Tennessee. We haven't talked about him much on this show. He's a physical, mean dude. Plays offensive tackle, but he's got offensive tackle, offensive guard, flex. So I think both of those picks would make us better. And I would be okay with either of those picks. I think Michael Mayer is so well-rounded. He would fit in this offense, and he's not going to a team that doesn't have weapons. We have weapons, so he wouldn't be forced to be a 60-catch, 800-yard guy. He could come in and be a 40-catch, 550-yard guy, but improve our running game. That's enough. That's enough for me. So, all right, if you had to guess what positions we'd address in the first 3 rounds, all right, so we're trying to narrow it down. First 3 rounds, what positions are you guessing?
Yeah, so I feel like it's O-line, cornerback, and tight end. because, as we've talked about previously, we've got Gilmore, who's, getting up there, and really it's sort of probably maybe a 1-year deal. They, in theory, he might be back for a second, but we don't really know. So cornerback needs to be addressed. We've mentioned that the O-line, I mean, worst case scenario, the interior of the O-line needs some depth anyway. So looking in there is, I think, a good idea. And then, tight end, which you sort of mentioned it. My concern with tight end in the first round is, especially this far back in the first round, is, are they going to be just a guy, or are they going to be something, you want your first round pick to sort of be a pro bowler, really. And it's sort of one of those weird things. The tight end just seems to be such a weird position to scout that it has me nervous. It's, like if
we are picking at 26 though.
Yeah.
Exactly. we've gotten lucky with our late first round picks, but it is like, do you want a pro bowler in the first round, or are you okay with a guy who we haven't had a tight end who could block? Well, a guy who can do both and could help the offense and can be a threat and can he'll take attention away from CeeDee Lamb, but when he's lined up, he can also help. What if he increases the average yards per carry by 1 yard, every time he's on the field?
Yeah, well, I mean, from my point of view, it's a question of, looking at the guys who are sort of like that, second round, third round kind of range at tight end. What's going to be the difference? Like, are we going to be sitting here in a few years' time and say that, Mayer was firing away better than the other guys that came?
Right.
Like I'm thinking of, off the top of my head, someone like a Musgrave.
Right. Well, Musgrave's different. I think Dalton Kincaid and Musgrave, the Cowboys will be interested in because they're great receiving options. But for what I'm interested in, give me Mayer, Darnell Washington, or Tucker Kraft. If Tucker Kraft is there, if you guaranteed me Tucker Kraft is there in the third, I am okay with the Cowboys waiting. But the question is, will either of them be there in the second or the third? Because if we go the route of Musgrave, if we go Kincaid in the first, or if we go even Laporta out of Iowa, who I like them all, but these are guys who aren't, the well-rounded tight ends are few and far between in this class.
Yeah, and I mean, at one point it kind of looked like Washington would be a good option in the second round, but I don't see any way that he now makes it down to the Cowboys' second round pick. So
right.
It is going to be an interesting sort of thing, because it feels like this year there's a lot of second round talent, but the gap between Cowboys picks is huge. So
yeah,
I think there's a lot of guys in that kind of middle range. Unless we
move back, right?
Well, yes. So for now, let's just say that we wanted to look at O-line, cornerback, and tight end. I think if they can get those squared away in this first, say, 4 rounds, I think most Cowboys fans will be pretty happy.
I like it. And Ultra Cowboy asked, do we think, or do I think that Mayer or Wright could fall? I don't, but also it wouldn't shock me. I don't think they'll be there, but when those guys at the draft show, when they narrow it down, I usually feel they have a finger on the pulse. So there's a good chance, I wouldn't be surprised. So, I recorded a short. So you make sure you subscribe to Toilet Title's YouTube channel. We're going to be releasing a lot of shorts on the first round prospects. And one of them was on Dalton Kincaid. And I mentioned Dalton Kincaid is possibly the best receiving option in the draft. Okay. So I think him and Jackson Smith and Jigba are the two best receiving options in the class. Dalton Kincaid has one of the best drop rates, in the entire class. Great route runner, could stretch the field. I think he had like the most touchdowns, over 20 plus yards receiving. So there's a chance. I wouldn't be shocked if Dalton Kincaid goes ahead of Michael Mayer, because we think Michael Mayer, he's a good fit for Green Bay. But now let's remove Green Bay from the equation. The rest of the NFL, like most of them want to air it out, high flying. They're going to want a guy who can go from the slot. Like the Cowboys and the Green Bay, we're kind of old school. And the NFL is changing. It's changing very much. We got a Giants fan here. Joe knows. I think you're right, Coach. Mayer will be the pick at 26. It is very possible. It's very possible. All right, I'm thinking. So you said O-line, cornerback, tight end. I think O-line, linebacker, tight end. I would love a corner. Julius Brents is my guy in the second round that I think would look absolutely phenomenal with Dan Quinn. Corey Trice possibly in the third. So it could be corner. But I just changed it up a little bit, a little different than Campey, because I think we're on spot. O-line, tight end, and again, this is in any order, but I think there's a chance Drew Sanders in the first round. I think they like Deion Henley. who's I think he was a former receiver, linebacker. He's got coverage ability. He's got a quick trigger. He can fly. He could play in the center. He's a little undersized. But the Cowboys, it brings me back to days of Dexter Coakley and Dat Win. Like, I kind of like the undersized linebacker in the Cowboys system. And then the NFL is actually more geared towards, though we had successful undersized linebackers before it was a thing. So, now it's possible. Undersized everything is a thing in the NFL. All right. So if you got to make my next guessman, if you got to make the Dallas Cowboys selection at pick 26, given who we think could fall into the range, who would your selection be?
Yeah, and so this is a really good question, actually, because I feel like we're always looping around those same sort of guys. I feel like if Wright drops, then I would be pretty happy with that, because my concern with him is not so much about the player, it's him making it to the Cowboys. So I think if he made it down to the Cowboys, I'd be pretty happy. If Mayer was there, and say someone like Torrance was there, then it would be, to me, it'd be a 50-50 of who I would want to go for. I completely understand your concept of getting a tight end who can do everything, and I think that would be really good for the offense. But let's say Wright. If Wright's there, then he's my pick, and then if he's not, then maybe you can talk me into Mayer.
I'm with you with Wright. If Wright is there, I'm selecting him. Deonte Banks is like, I have Joey Porter Jr. and I have Christian Gonzalez ahead of Deonte Banks. I have Banks as my third corner, and he is just now starting to climb. I mean, I'd say in the last 2 or 3 weeks, people are starting to catch up. But prior to the last 2 or 3 weeks, he was anywhere from 5 to 10. So now he's going anywhere. So it used to be like 25 to like early second. Now people are mocking him in the top 15. If Deonte Banks is there, I just think he is an elite corner. I think he'd come in and challenge Trayvon Diggs to be the corner one in Dallas. Stephon Gilmore, we can move him around. Great. And he could also show these guys how to be pros, which I think is excellent for a 5th round pick. I don't think he'll be there. Then for me, Darnell Wright, but I don't think he's going to be there. If I'm making the selection, though, it's Drew Sanders or Calijah Campey. I want to take this defense and I want to go from a very, very good unit to an absolutely elite unit that is going to smother you. Calijah Campey, he's not going to be the run stuffer, but we got the run stuffer, right? We got Hankins back. So Hankins can be the run stuffer. Calijah Campey, we could rotate him in. We can afford to, because the defense is a good unit. And he is a penetrator. I'm telling you, if you have Calijah Campey and Micah Parsons rushing the passer, offenses are going to be in trouble. They're going to be in trouble. This kid, he's only about 6'1". I think he's only like 280 pounds. But his hands, his feet, he's slippery. I think we might see Calijah Campey fall to the early second. Whoever gets him is going to get a steal. Again, he's not going to be an every down player, but he is going to be a guy who's going to make offenses have long days. So I've already talked up Drew Sanders. I'm going to try to make this defensive unit elite, because I think we're very close to doing that. And then the rest of the draft, if I went defense in the first round, offensive line, tight end, running back, backup quarterback, like I am going all offense for the remainder of the draft if I make my defensive unit elite in the first round. So, all right, are there any players that you would trade up for? And if so, who would you trade up for?
Yeah, so there's probably only a few really that I sort of thought of. And so Skorinsky, the tackle / guard, whatever you want to call him, to me, everything I'm seeing at the moment, he's not going to make it out of the top 10. If he does it, he drops to 11. If he sort of dropped down to that 16, 18 kind of range, then he would be someone that I would be having a lot of conversations about. And then the other one is Joey Porter Jr., just from that point of view of, you just look at Joey Porter Jr. and you think that's a Quinn cornerback right there, isn't it? It's just like, he's got that size and you just think, it'd be a perfect kind of selection. So if he dropped, I wouldn't mind having, the team have conversations about going up. So it's that interesting thing. I feel like this draft, and we've talked about it a lot, is, there's a lot of value a bit later on in the second rounds, but those two guys, if either of them do drop, then I'm happy to have some future assets thrown that way to get those picks.
So Ultra Cowboy mentioned it, and I've heard a little buzz that Joey Porter's dropping, but I don't see him falling past the Steelers. I just don't. It's too perfect. They need a corner. And I heard a quote or read a quote from Hines Ward that might have been on the Athletic or PFF, one of the websites I frequent. They mentioned Hines Ward had said that Joey Porter was in high school, Joey Porter Jr., and he came out to practice and he got a few reps against the young Antonio Brown and a few times jammed him, right? Jammed him. So it didn't say how the rest of the route went, but Hines Ward said like he still doesn't know how gifted he is. So like he's still mentally growing into that frame and that body and that athleticism, but he plays the game with a physical demeanor. I love having Parsons on our defense because I love the way he plays the game. Like you can tell he cares about winning. He's aggressive. He's physical. He takes pride in not letting up points. Like I think that's how Joey Porter is. You give me as many guys on the defensive side of the football like that as you can. Give me guys that have pride, take pride in winning and being dominant and aren't just okay with like, all right, we're playing a bad team. Let's just get the win and move on. Like they want to shut you out. Give me those guys. Joey Porter's one of those guys. I'd move up for him. I'd move up for Skoronski as well. And then Jalen Carter. I think if Jalen Carter falls outside of the top 10, I don't care. He's top 3 player in the draft. I think Bijan Robinson's top 3 player in the draft. Like I think teams are going to pass on him that are going to regret passing on him. I know he's a running back. He might only give you 5 years, but those are going to be 5 elite years and he's going to make your offense dynamic. Whatever. I'm not trading up for him, but I'm trading up for Jalen Carter. If Jalen Carter falls outside the top 10, like go get him, find a way, So now who are some players you don't want to see end up in New York, Philly, Washington? Like you don't want to see these guys in the division.
Yeah, New York, I don't care. I feel like New York is, to a certain extent, and sorry to Joe in the chat, but I feel like they overperformed on where we thought they were at. So I feel like they're probably at least still a year away from really sort of dressing me out too much in the division. So like, yeah, I think there's still question marks there around their quarterback and whether or not their quarterback is the quarterback of the future. So from my point of view, I don't think there's anyone in particular I'm really concerned about them picking up. Philly, I don't want any of the decent wide receivers. I feel like just having another wide receiver in their lineup is just going to be a nightmare. The talk at the moment, like the rumor going around talking about, the possibility of Derrick Henry going there. Well, that probably scares me a fair bit. And maybe if they went Bijan Robinson as well, or Bijan Robinson, then that'd probably, give me some worry. But yeah, definitely the wide receivers is something that I don't want in Philly. And then as far as the Washington team goes, I just want them to keep flailing around at quarterback. I feel like as long as they don't have a quarterback, they're not going to go anywhere. It's so hard to win in the NFL without a decent quarterback. So I just want them to, pick some other skill position and be done with it. Maybe get another defensive lineman.
Yeah, I'd be worried about an elite like a Jackson Smith and Jigba going to Philly. Like if they were comfortable with AJ Brown and Devontae Smith on the outside, a guy like that, or even Josh Downs a little later. Because I don't like my guys going to teams I like. I don't want Josh Downs going to any of the NFC East teams because I think he's a gamer. I think he's absolutely phenomenal. I don't want Israel Abanikanda going to any of those teams, but those are later round guys. Well, no, Josh Downs might go in the first round, but Izzy's probably like a 3rd round guy. The guys, though, that I definitely don't want to see in the division, Jalen Carter, Bijan Robinson, Joey Porter Jr., Deontay Banks, and Jackson Smith and Jigba. Those are the 5 guys I don't want going to any of the teams in the NFC East because I believe those guys will make those teams a lot better. Like those are all. And then Ultra Cowboy mentioned Skoronski. Yeah, Skoronski goes to Philly. Their offensive line is just always elite. Like absolutely. It's like the Green Bay Packers, how the quarterback position is with Green Bay. So like the offensive line is with Philadelphia. Like their offensive line, like revolving door. All right, all pro. One guy's out, all pro in. One guy's out, all pro in. Like let me get a few years of their offensive line not being dominant. Like that'd be great. So no Skoronski in Philadelphia. All right. So really, I'm just going to leave you with the current odds. All right. And this was last week. Cam, why don't you take over? Why don't you just discuss, kind of your final thoughts on the draft before we wrap this thing up? And I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to look up the odds, the current odds for the Dallas Cowboys draft pick right now.
No worries. Yeah. So I think it's going to be really interesting to see. So I feel like if the Cowboys go offensive line in the first round, and I've sort of said every week, going forward, I still feel like they look at an offensive lineman in the 3rd or 4th round, because that just seems to be where a lot of the interviews that they've been having with offensive linemen have taken place, is those 3rd or 4th round kind of guys. So they're definitely going offensive line. Whether or not they just decide to load up on a whole bunch of mid-round guys and hope that one of them is a solution, it'll be interesting to see. But I also, it seems to be that they've done their homework on a couple of different linebackers. So they've definitely looked at linebacker and still feel like it's an option that they want to sort of improve on. So,
well, I got the odds for you. You ready for?
Have you? Yep.
Yes. So Dalton Kincaid plus 450. He is the number one. Like, he's 18.2% implied probability. Michael Mayer Michael Mayer's second, plus 500, was 16.7% probability. Darnell Wright and Bijan Robinson are tied at third with 15.4% probability. So they're plus 550. So that's not too far off from Kincaid or Mayer. Then it drops to plus 700 with a 12.5% probability. Jahmyr Gibbs. I haven't heard that name at all. That would be very interesting to have Pollard and Gibbs. Like,
I saw that on a mock draft the other day, and I thought the person was nuts. I just feel like, like there's enough information out there saying that you don't take a running back in the 1st round, and whether or not it's true or not, I feel like, if you're getting Robinson, you're getting a generational player,
right? He reminds me of LaDainian Tomlinson so much. Like, I hear people, Barkley, Barry Sanders, like, dudes like LT. Like, look at their RAS score, look at their RAS score, like, look at the way they catch the football, look at the way they move, look at their stiff arm. give me LT for 5 years. Give me LaDainian Tomlinson for 5 years. I'd love it.
Yeah, so if I'm not getting him, I feel like I'm moving the running back down the road a bit. Yeah. That's my gut feeling.
All right, so the next two, Drew Sanders plus 800. So he's even below Jahmyr Gibbs with an 11% implied probability. And then finally, Osiris Torrance plus 850 with 10.5% implied probability. But the field is plus 400. So the odds are most, I guess, in favor of the field. 20% implied probability that they don't take any of those guys. So
I think that just, like, once again goes back to what we've seen, is like the Cowboys have so many options. And then I think the mid-round, like the mid-first round, is just going to be chaos. Like, I just feel like there's so many different ways you can go. It's so hard to know what's going to happen.
Yeah. Well, man, next Sunday we will be talking. So during the NFL draft Thursday night, you can subscribe to the channel. We go live. We do a live stream. Okay. We're going to have my guy KT from CFP Nation. Nino's going to be in there. Nino's going to be going in and out. And then Campey's going to be in there for the Cowboys pick. Bobby Winter's going to be in there for the Packers pick. He's been doing shorts on the Green Bay Packers for Toilets and Titles for the past few weeks. So we are going to have a live stream. Join us. But then Sunday, we get to, like, how crazy next week, man. We're going to be, like, discussing the Dallas Cowboys 2023 draft pick.
Yeah, well, it's going to be interesting because, like, I think I mentioned a few weeks ago, it's one of those things. The first round is kind of easy to get, like, from an Australian point of view, it's really easy to kind of get into. And then even day 2 is generally not too bad. But day 3 is sort of quite often pretty much over before I sort of wake up. So I'm really going to have to try and make a concerted effort this year to try and get up a bit earlier.
Right.
And really sort of just figure out where they're going with those picks. Because, like, there's something about the NFL draft and just being able to sit there and sort of like watching the dominoes all fall into different places, and seeing the trades and stuff that I just love. And it's such a, like, as we said, it's just like this time of optimism. Like, you can look at any pick and you can talk yourself into it and think it's going to be great. And it's
I challenge you. Here's my challenge. Okay. I challenge you. You get to put 3 players in the thumbnail, right? You get to do that. That's what you do. That's your thing. I challenge you to one of those 3 players. It has to be the draft pick. All right. That's the challenge. All right. You take
okay.
It. Yeah. So
hang on.
Don't tell
follow-up
me.
Question.
Don't tell me.
Follow-up question.
Go.
Are we talking about the first round pick, or are we talking about
first round pick? Nail the first round pick. One of those 3 players on the graphic has to be, I mean, what doesn't have to? It'd be, try to nail it. All right. Challenge accepted.
Yep.
Excellent.
Let's do it.
My guy. All right, everybody. We appreciate you watching the show, whether you're watching live, whether you're watching post, the recording. We really appreciate you. Check out the Twitter at Toilets and Titles if you want to get into our mock draft challenge. That's where you need to go. The pinned tweet will explain it to you. It is free. There's a few rules. Subscribe to a few YouTube channels, get in a gilded chat. But for every 10 people who join, $20 are going in a pot. And we are going to give the entire pot to whoever wins. You win. And then we also might, I'm going to talk to Joe. Maybe we will, the morning of the draft or the night before the draft, we'll take all the mocks and we'll do like some data crunching and put out a mock draft of all of the submissions, like what it averaged out to. Because I'd be interested to see how close that is, like how close the Title Tribe, Title Tribe, you, the listener, how close you guys are, how spot on you are. So we appreciate you listening. We're looking forward to the NFL draft. We will see you next week. And by then, Campey will have nailed who the selection is for the Dallas Cowboys. So see you next week. Take care.